Welcome to the Samurai's Guide to Work-Life Mastery, where ancient wisdom meets modern productivity. This show blends timeless Japanese philosophies with practical tools to help you create balance, purpose, and harmony in your work and life. Each season, we explore one of Steve Beauchamp's transformative books, uncovering actionable strategies and insights to help you thrive. This season, we're exploring Always Improving, Lessons from the Samurai, a guide designed to take you on a journey into the principles of Bushido, offering practical strategies for navigating modern challenges with discipline, purpose, and harmony. Steve Beauchamp is a Lean Six Sigma Master Black Belt, project management expert, and lifelong student of Japanese culture. As an author, speaker, and coach, he is dedicated to helping leaders and professionals achieve work-life harmony through continuous improvement in the wisdom of Bushido. So you're in the right place, whether you're looking to find balance, spark your creativity, or lead with purpose. Get ready to embark on a journey toward mastery, one principle at a time.
Okay, well, welcome to episode 4. And in this episode, we're going to focus predominantly on what I like to refer to as the main weapons of continuous improvement. Weapons, of course, being in quotation marks. And really this is taken from the way that Taiichi Ohno used to teach when he was, one of the predominant leaders in the Toyota manufacturing system. And before we kind of jump into what each of those tools are, I think a little bit of background on why 7 is important. And I did some research to really understand why Ono-san thought that there was 7 key. It was really an arbitrary number that he decided it was going to be, but it was based upon a story that was, one that was one of his favorite stories. And it was the legendary tale of Benkei, who was a samurai that always left his village with 7 weapons. And he was always ready for any type of battle that would come his way. And so Ono-san decided that there were, 7 key continuous improvement type tools that all of his leaders really needed to master. And if they were able to develop mastery in these tools, that they would really not need a lot of other tools in order to be a successful leader. And so in no particular order, and I'm not exactly sure what order he would teach them to use these tools, but one of those tools was called a check sheet, right? Simple check sheet where you just keep track of what happens in a process. So you could think of this as like a very simple, table, if you will, and it's got different, say you're tracking things over time. You'd have time rows that you go in and do your check, and then you would record the value during that time. It's a very simple check sheet, or it could just be a tally mark, right, in terms of like how often something was happening. And then he would also teach them a tool called the Pareto chart. This is one that you've probably heard of, based upon the Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule, meaning that 80% of the outputs or outcome of a process are really determined by 20% of the potential causes or variables. And using a Pareto chart becomes really helpful when you're trying to identify, like after you've used this check sheet and you've gathered some data, using a Pareto chart is a good way to group things by affinity, right? To be able to start seeing if there's any kind of pattern to the data. The next tool was the Ishikawa diagram, also known as the fishbone diagram. And, using using this diagram to brainstorm potential causes to a particular effect that's happening, right? So let's say you did your check sheet, you then use your Pareto chart to determine, what are the most likely, things that are going on, like that top 20%. And then you would do fishbone diagram to determine, okay, well, what are the potential causes that are contributing to this effect that I'm seeing? And really great tool for digging in and understanding how things are connected to each other. And then you could use, what's known as a control chart to take the data from your check sheet and plot it, right? Especially if it's something that's over time. It's a great way to see if there's any patterns that develop over time in your process. The next tool kind of gets a little bit more technical. So maybe those first four that I just referred to are a little bit more simple in terms of how you would use them. The next three would be a little bit more technical. So the first of those is the scatter plot. So you're plotting X versus Y, right? So to really start to see if there's any kind of regression that starts to form based on if one thing gets better, then something else gets worse, or if one thing gets better, then something else gets better too. And so you could be able to see the relationship between two different variables. The second one in that, subgroup is the stratification diagram. And this is a really great way to separate natural groupings of data so that you can start really telling a better story with the data that you see. And finally, there's the histogram, which is a great tool for grouping data into natural and logical data sets. So you can start seeing, is your data set normal, right? Meaning, and we're talking statistically normal, or is it statistically not normal? Meaning that it would have a skewed kind of representation of your data. So think normal data looks like the bell curve, and anything that's not normal is basically anything but that. It's a good way to think about it. And so, Ono-san used to really emphasize the importance of getting really, really proficient at using these 7 tools, because he felt that if you were able to master these 7 tools, then you'd be a really effective leader. I would argue that if you're able to get really good at using these tools, you can really make a difference in your own life and how you live the life that you want to live. You can start keeping track of how often you move towards the goals that you want. It's a way to understand why things aren't going necessarily the way you want them to go. Or if you're doing a post-mortem on something, to understand how it was able to be done so well. That's really good information too, to be able to look back and say, oh, these are the things I did, and this is a thing that I want to continue doing. And so it kind of gives you a roadmap for the next time. So, I think when it comes to the business side of using these types of tools, there's a lot of literature, there's a lot of detail around how you could do that. But I think there's a huge opportunity in being able to apply those in a personal setting. And so I'd really encourage you to think about how you could start using some of these tools to lean into how you would apply the Bushido code into your life, how you could then, utilize that concept of Kaizen to continually improve the self, right? So in this context, you're really focusing on improving the self so that you can improve how you interact with all those people in your life, whether they're colleagues or family members or whatever it happens to be. So that's essentially the conversation for today. And so I hope that you're starting to see how some of these concepts they're really timeless. Like Taichi Ono, when he was teaching this, was back in the the 50s and 60s of our last century. So we're going on 70 some odd years. So it's been around for a minute. And obviously the samurai have been around for hundreds of years. So, I think there's definitely something to be said about these concepts and these tools for, really living a more meaningful and purposeful life. And so with that, we've reached the end of our episode. I hope you enjoyed this episode and will join me on the next one.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Samurai's Guide to Work-Life Mastery. We hope today's insights inspire you to take one more step toward harmony, growth, and purpose in your life. This episode was brought to you by Always Improving. Lessons from the Samurai. If you'd like to dive deeper into the ideas discussed today, you can grab your copy of the book through the link in the show notes. While you're there, don't forget to check out Steve's website for additional resources and tools to help you on your journey. You can also subscribe to the newsletter for exclusive tips, updates, and content to keep your growth on track. As a thank you for joining the newsletter, you will get a free copy of Steve's book, The Path to Harmony, Practical Steps to Finding Purpose and Meaning in Your Work. And of course, don't forget to subscribe to the show, leave a review, and share this episode with someone who's ready to master the art of work-life harmony.